Good morning, afternoon, evening, and good night. I'm Tomo, formerly known as Zombo,
And I'm Shade Reagan, formerly known as Shade Reagan.
and welcome back to 240 two Warhammer nerds talk about Warhammer.
Yeah, we're back to the 41st millennium this time because we're alternating.
Yep. So we've talked about 40k factions in general without focusing specifically on their leaders. We talked about Sigmar without focusing specifically on their leaders. We decided we could probably have a good discussion about specific faction leaders, major characters in each universe.
Yes, so we're going to take a look at the overall leaders of all the different factions in such instances where a very clear faction leader can be defined and identified.
So we did limit ourselves to some rules, though, because, for example, there are 18 Primarchs for just the Space Marines. There's also 10 Imperial Guard factions and all these other things. We decided to keep to major leaders. Unless there are specific characters in those factions that have such varying objectives and agendas to actually say, well, no, these guys are their own thing.
Basically, for example, you're not going to see Eldrad on here because while Eldrad was a major leader of Ulthwé, he wasn't really the leader of the Eldar as an overall species. Or at least not
As
the crack-rolled Eldar as a faction.
as a second rule, we tried to limit ourselves only to characters who have or had models or can be
So,
represented by someone who has a model.
so no Fulgrim.
No Fulgrim, no God Emperor of Mankind,
And then
and
we don't have the Chaos Gods, for example. They're not on here
yeah.
because they don't actually show up. They influence things from a distance.
And as our third final major rule, only characters who are currently active and or like currently doing stuff in the universe.
Correct.
So we're not going to have Fulgrim
So
since he's still throwing a tantrum in the Eye of Terror.
it's hinted he's coming back, but it still hasn't happened. We're
Right.
also, for say, don't have the Beast or any of the other Primorcs since they're dead.
Yeah. And while I do have Belisarius Cawl here, we discussed after I made the tier list, but before we started the recording, Belisarius Cawl, while he is the highest ranking Mars Magos, he's also
That
a
we have a
renegade.
model of.
Yeah, that we have a model of. He's also kind of a renegade. The other tech priests of Mars don't like him, and so it's not really fair to represent him as the leader of the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Yeah, he's not the Fabricator General. So for
No.
the sake of this list, he is going to be disregarded.
So
We
I'm
just
just going to
can't
stick
delete
him
him.
right into Shrug. We will remove him after the tier list is done
Why don't you just why don't you just keep him off the list altogether?
because it's gonna tickle my my nitpickiness.
Okay, I'm just saying we can just leave him
Like I
off.
said, I will take him off, but for now we're just gonna leave him in Shrug, just so that I have
Okay,
like
fair
once
enough.
we can clear out the bottom and then I can take him off.
That is enough intro, however. Shall we get to it?
Let us get to it.
Beginning off our list is arguably one of 40K's greatest villains of all time, Abaddon or Abaddon or Phalbadon the Armless. I mean the Despoiler. The leader of the Black Legion and thus sort of chaos as an overall
Chaos
group.
Undivided.
Yes, he leads Chaos Undivided, and all of the various Chaos Warlords sort of fealty to him. Even the Primarchs themselves have bowed to him. He wields the talons of Horus and Dracnian, the demon sword created by the first murder, and it's his goal to kill the Emperor and take over. So just a really scary dude, and that's why he's probably going into garbage tier.
Yeah. So you said so many things that are so cool about Abaddon. You left out stuff like Abaddon was able to single-handedly kill a clone of Horus,
Yep.
and that he literally forced the demon Primarchs to bend their knees to him.
I mentioned that.
Well, you said the Primarchs serve him, but not that he forced them to
Yes.
serve him.
Fair enough.
Despite the fact that he has all of these achievements, all these objectives, that he was able to destroy Cadia, Abaddon is so overblown. Like, at no point do I ever feel like he's a legitimate, credible threat, because, you know, he got held off for 13 Black Crusades by one pissed off human boy.
Oh, and yes, of course. GW writing all 13 Black Crusades were successful because Abaddon was completing secret objectives in the background
Oh
to
yeah,
enact his
totally.
big grand plan. Whoop-de-doo. And he split the galaxy in half, doing about as much damage as what the Tyranids have done in like 300 years.
I would say he's done about as much damage as the Tau have done in 300 years.
Hey. Let's give him a bit of credit. I don't think the Tau have blown up a planet yet.
Okay, fair. I mean,
But yeah, the problem with
the
Abaddon
Damocles Gulf
is
happened.
but that's one sector of space. The point being, the problem with Abaddon, for me at least, is he tends to win just because GW says he wins, and it's not really clear why he's winning.
Yeah, like
I don't feel like
Abaddon wanted to take Cadia and use it as his staging ground for his assault on Terra. He failed to take Cadia and thus had to destroy it.
Yeah,
But
and
that was
like
a win.
he's not compelling as a villain because his whole plan is, oh, I want to take over the Imperium, but I want to do it under my right and return it to the Space Marines who took it over, and I won't let Chaos control me. But like, how is he going to do any of that if he uses Chaos as his pure weapon?
Yeah.
And
There's only
half
one
of the
character
reason he's
who...
cool, half the reason he's a threat is because of his sword, and like that sword could be given to someone else.
Yeah. There's one character who I think is Chaos aligned that's even stupider with his use of Chaos, and we'll talk about him later. But for now, yeah, Abaddon, for being the big bad of 40k, is just not compelling.
Also, his top knot is stupid.
That said, his model is gorgeous. Moving on. For 10,000 years, the Thousand Suns have maintained a threat in the galaxy. Not through the efforts of Magnus the Red, who was pouting in the Eye of Terror, but because of his prodigal son, the person who spent tens of thousands of years trying to break into the Black Library of the Eldar, whose efforts created the rubric of Ahriman, damning the Thousand Suns forever to being dust inside suits of armor. He is the reason the Thousand Suns are the Thousand Suns. This is Ahriman.
The Exile. By the way, you said breaking into the Black Library for tens of thousands of years. I don't think he's that old.
Okay, 10,000 years, but also the warp is fucky.
Wibbly wobbly, warpy stuff.
I love Ahriman. Ahriman is one of my favorite Space Marine characters. I love the whole idea that he believes he's doing right by his people, and that he's just at odds with the Imperium because he has to be. But also, it kind of ties into the whole, he is absolutely 100% a pawn of Tzeentch, even if he doesn't want to be. The dude doesn't even have a face anymore. You pull off his helmet, and there's just a void of space there.
Yeah, that is always the coolest part of the fact that like he has been mutated and warped, but he hasn't seemed to notice.
Yeah.
He's got a cool model. He's got cool rules. He's a really cool wizard guy.
Yeah.
And I think he better exemplifies Tzeentch than the like Age of Sigmar Tzeentchian mortal characters.
Yeah. So I'm going to put him in A or S. I really like Ahriman. Like I said, he's my favorite Space Marine character. What do you think, Shade?
We can put him in A for Ahriman. I think what prevents him from being S tier for me is he lacks a bit of universality in his actions. Like you can kind of question why he would fight certain factions or be involved in certain things, because a lot of his quest is wrapped up in his own personal story of trying to fix what he did wrong. It's compelling and interesting, but Chaos are supposed to be the bad guys, even though everyone's the bad guy, and he maybe doesn't feel like the bad guy for absolutely everyone.
Yeah, fair enough. Also, him being the second most hated person in Chaos is interesting.
Next up, we're on a roll with A's. We've got Angron, the Primarch of the World Eaters, and the angriest person in all of 40k. Angron, of course, came from a tragic fall. He was when his Primarch pod landed, he was forced into slavery to be a gladiator and had these butcher's nails implanted in his head, which made him always angry all the time. And so he basically was never stable. And he managed to lead a slave revolt and break out, but they got cornered, and it looks like they were all going to die in a recreation of the end of Spartacus when the Emperor found him and teleported Angron out of there.
Rather than save
and
his
just
people.
Angron. None of his friends.
Yeah. And you're kind of highlighting my problem with Angron, but continue.
Yeah. Well, and so he was always kind of bitter about that from then on, and the Butcher's Nails made him increasingly more and more unstable until eventually he just gave into his rage and bam, Demon Primarch. And now he just goes around messing shit up. And notably, he was, in the lore at least, one of the first Demon Primarchs to do stuff significantly after the Horus Heresy, considering he was involved in the first war for Armageddon, the one that is often least remarked upon. But he's back now with a new model.
And nowadays, he is literally immortal. After you kill him, after 8 months,
8 weeks, 8 days, and 8 hours.
9 weeks, 8 hours, and 8 minutes, he will respawn. Because 8 weeks, 8 days is stupid.
It's funny you remark upon that, because the funnier thing is GW had a better way, because if he just broke those weeks down into days, that means he comes back in 64 days and 8 hours. And 64 is, of course, a multiple of 8.
It's 8 squared.
So yeah, they really should have just went with that.
Yeah. So you kind of highlighted my issue with Angron as a character. Angron was one of the coolest characters in the Horus Heresy. And now he's just Khorne Angry Boy. Like, there was so much depth to him where he was like this degenerating madman, but, he was trying to keep control of himself. And it was the Emperor's actions saving him rather than helping him free his people that led to him building a resentment. And so, while he has a cool model, he's not one of my favorite Primarchs anymore.
So valid, but I think his degenerated state in modern day is supposed to be the end point of his tragedy. And you kind of need him to be this raging monster these days to understand just how far he fell. Now, I will say, I do think Karn kind of does this a little bit better, because Karn still has his modern times of lucidity, whereas Angron, as far as we know, appears to just be eternally wrapped in anger. But the thing is, Angron's about to have a lot more lore dump that we'll have to see how his character is taken at that point. It'll be interesting to see how he acts in Arcs of Omen and so forth.
Yeah, it should be noted we're recording this prior to the World Eaters Codex actually coming out and the new Arcs of Omen book actually coming out. Like, we've seen...
Making this kind of an awkward conversation.
Yeah, so we've seen the new model for Angron at this point of recording, but we haven't actually seen what they've done with him.
That said...
I think he's a comfortable B.
I think he's a B tier too, because the thing is, even if he's lacking in character, he's a classic kind of bad guy.
Like our streamer is
And,
saying, like our stream guy is saying, he's basically a cartoon character of a bad guy, a noble person brought to absolute madness.
and there's nothing wrong with that. He's
No.
also very 40k.
Yes. Speaking of very 40k, after the fall of the Eldar, the Eldar remaining in the webway found themselves degenerating. They realized they were slowly losing their souls to Slaanesh, and realized that if they made someone else suffer in their place, they could continue to live. Enter a former slave who decided to stage a coup, overthrow all of the Eldar nobles remaining in the webway of Kamara, and forcing all of the people inside to stop using psychic powers, because that's just inviting more demons to the webway. We've got Asdrubal Vect, Grand Master, living muse of the Drukhari. And
That
while he doesn't
motherfucker.
while he doesn't have a model anymore, he used to have a gorgeous one that just hasn't aged very well.
Also, I mean, with how secretive Vect is, you don't know who he could be.
Yeah.
Agents of Vect are everywhere. It's
He's
like a certain other character we won't talk about.
Yeah, he kind of does Alfarius, but with Dark Eldar. So, all that being said, I think Vect's whole thing is kind of right there, right in front of you. There's not too much depth to his character. He's a power grabber who's doing what's best for him under the guise of it's best for his people. And the Drukhari are kind of where they are, largely due to his machinations.
Yes. So, from somebody who's not super into Drukhari, even though I ranked them in S tier, I think Vect also has a little bit of the same problem as Ahriman, maybe to a lesser degree. A lot of his plot is focused around what's going on in Kamara.
Yeah.
So he often doesn't necessarily feel like a villain to the wider setting as much as he feels like the villain in the Drukhari storyline. I think it's notable
most
that
residents of the Imperium, like the real space, don't even realize there's a difference between Eldar and Drukhari. They're just
there's
Eldar.
probably a ton of characters in 40k who don't even know who Vect is.
Yeah.
So little of an impact he has on the wider setting. And I think it's notable that his I would say his most storied exploit is pulling a Space Marine like company into the webway to kill off his rivals and then letting them leave. You know, that's not. He didn't damage the Imperium.
I don't think he let them leave. I think he lured them in, crippled their ship so that they couldn't leave, and then they went on their crusade and killed off his rivals.
Did they get out? Did the Salamanders got out afterwards? I thought they had.
No, I don't think they got out.
In any case, it's not something he did to damage the Imperium or anyone else.
No, he was
He
just
did it
using
for
the
his own
Imperium
power.
as a pawn. For
Yes.
that said, despite the fact that the Drukhari are one of my favorite factions, I'm going to stick Vect in C tier.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
The Drukhari are great, but the Drukhari are great not because of Vect.
Continuing on our theme of Keebs, next up we have, well, it's pictured is a Saruman. This is really representing all the Phoenix Lords, as they're sort of the closest thing the Craft World Eldar have to a overall faction leader. They, appear where they're needed, guide the Eldar on what needs to happen, what they should do, advise in all things warfare, and are really the ones carrying out a lot of the fights on the Eldar's behalf. And it is said during the Apocalypse Ranadanja that they will be the last ones standing, all back-to-back, fending off the forces of chaos. As somebody who is at least a peripheral fan of the Craft World Eldar, I always thought the Aspect Warriors were among the coolest parts of the faction, and as such, I think the Phoenix Lords are really, really cool. That I really like, them each one exemplifying a certain kind of warfare, and I like how you can see like how the Aspect Warriors are sort of a lesser version of them. I really dig into their storyline and their tales of great feats. Maugan Ra guiding his home craft world out of the Eye of Terror. I think it gets described as him pulling it out. Magen Ra even fended off a tendril of a Tyranid Hive Fleet solo once, which is somebody who likes Tyranids. I still think that one's at least a little deserved and a little cool.
And if I recall correctly, he was basically fighting them off just on a top of a giant pile of corpses, just continuing to fire, too angry to die.
I always assumed that Doom music was playing while that was happening.
Yeah.
Jane Czar being able to run so fast, her footsteps were mistaken as rain by some Night Lords, and then she killed them all, but died as well. That was a bit lame. And really, that's my one holdup with the Phoenix Lords. Because they're immortal, because the whole thing with the Phoenix Lords is when they die, if another aspect wearer puts on their armor, they become the Phoenix Lord. Like their personality gets uploaded into them. GW tends to kill them a lot, and I feel like they don't treat them with as much deserved respect as they deserve.
I'd say the other issue with the Phoenix Lords is, for the most part, they're like the coolness of them is based on their feats and their what they do in battle. Like, I can't think of a single personality for any of the Phoenix Lords.
Malgan Raz, Dark and Mysterious. They have personalities, but the personalities are very much what you can look at their model and try and guess, and you'll probably be right.
Yeah, and they've shown up in various books and stuff. Like, I remember in Path of the Dark Eldar, the second book, one of the incubi we're following has a duel with Drazar, and Drazar just shows up. He's just points his blades at him, and they have a duel. Drazar slaps his shit and then lets him leave anyway. And it's just okay. So Drazar is just a killer, but he's also a killer with honor. And that's where his personality ends.
They also desperately need a model update. There's only 3 Phoenix Lords with modern models.
And one of them is
counting
Drazar.
Yeah.
So I think these guys are also C, even though their feats are really cool. And I think they, like you said, they are one of the coolest parts of the Eldar.
See, I would personally place them in B tier, just because they're a character I want to know more about, and I want to see more of them. Whereas with Vect, I feel like his story's been told, and I'm not necessarily as interested in hearing more about what's going on with him.
All right.
Also, if GW weren't such human supremacists, a Phoenix Lord should be able to duel a Primarch on even strength, fight me.
Yeah.
That should be an even match.
Yes. Because the Primarchs are really wanked.
Yeah, they are.
Moving on. When I think they were introduced in 4th edition. The Tau were first introduced.
3rd edition.
3rd edition. There you go. When the Tau were first introduced, we got glimpses of them being super amazing politicians and being super really nice, noble, bright people. And it took a while to get some depth that maybe the Tau aren't as great as people want to think they are. And that is best exemplified with the militaristic, almost Chinese-like propaganda of the Ethereals, who their very presence can brainwash and control the lesser Tau. So here we have Anva, leader of the Tau Sept during the Damocles Gulf War, who is dead, but the Tau don't even know that because they've been using body doubles and holograms of him to continue to lead the people.
Yeah, he got killed by a Qluxus assassin during the Damocles Gulf narrative campaign. Kind of weird that an anti-psyker assassin was the most effective against the Tau, but there you go.
Yeah, and the Anva especially kind of exemplifies what we were talking about in the 40k ranking list, where the Tau should be like the Covenant. Because this is very much like a Covenant prophet. Like, full-on propaganda over actual power. Anva, just like any other ethereal, isn't much of a fighter or any sort of real leader. It's pure propaganda that leads them to be able to direct the water and air casts to lead the Tau people.
if I recall correctly, when he dies, it's like kicking and screaming as the assassin
Yeah.
murders him. Like he does not go out honorably or nobly. He is crying. He's essentially crying almost.
Yeah. Anva's a little bitch. But I think that actually was a pretty great moment. Like, it really exemplifies what the Tau could be and what they've been turning the Tau into. Where that's very much propaganda and mind control forcing the will onto the people.
That said, I don't I don't think Anva even actually has a personality. I think a lot of his lore just describes him as a great leader. He was so great, and then he died, but then they covered it up.
So, you want to stick him in C or Shrug? Because I don't think he's a garbage character, but his arc is done and he's dead, so.
I would say C tier.
Alright. Moving on, another garbage
Uh,
character.
oh,
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 go ahead.
this is my introduction.
Yes.
We have Be'lakor, the Dark Master, the first demon prince of chaos, and the only one to have all four chaos gods unite to create him.
Yes.
Be'lakor is a character that exists both in 40k and in Age of Sigmar, so you might be seeing him again soon. And, well, I suppose this might be a bit of spoilers, but I think Be'lakor is a lot better of a character in Age of Sigmar than I think he is in 40k. And maybe it's just because he hasn't been around long enough. He doesn't have enough of a story built up behind him. He was introduced into 40k relatively recently. I can't remember exactly when it happened. I think it was like 6th or 7th or so.
I don't
But
think
it
Chaos
was
Space
around
Marines
then.
even got a codex in 6th edition, so it probably was 7th.
I'm pretty sure they did. Yeah, they got one in 6th.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
they were the launch.
they didn't
They
get
were
a
the launch
codex in
codex.
7th. They didn't get a codex in 7th, so it would have been 6th. Or those
Yeah,
Chaos
they
Demons
did.
didn't get a codex.
Um, yeah, like it's hard to talk about because I'm probably gonna save a lot of it for the Age of Sigmar one. But Be'lakor in 40k just feels like they copy and pasted a lot of his story and then didn't give him anything interesting to do. I think he showed up in one of the Psychic Awake. Oh, he showed up in uh, Warzone Carcharodon or whatever. Charadon, the Book of Rust,
Yeah.
and he like stole a knight family homeworld into the warp. He just stole the planet, but I don't even know if he has interactions with Abaddon to like make his whole "I want to replace you" thing legitimate.
So you want to stick him in Shrug because like there's just like nothing to him.
Yeah, just put him in shrug tier because he's not bad. He just feels unnecessary and underdeveloped.
All right. Moving on, another Tau character, someone who is often described as basically the Shar Aznable of 40k. Someone who saw the brainwashing and propaganda of the Ethereals and said, "Nah, screw that. I'm making my own sept with blackjack and hookers, and also we're gonna have melee." We've got Commander Farsight.
And you best know that we're going to be placing him on his tier list at 3 times normal speed.
Yeah. So let's talk about Farsight. Farsight embodies the naivete of the Tau, whereas like the Ethereals embody like the horrible propaganda. Farsight has a Necron sword that is keeping him immortal by sucking the life force out of the people he slays. The dude doesn't even realize what he's doing. Doesn't understand why he's been living for 300 years, whereas all of his compatriots are dead.
Man, I just totally remembered that it is now confirmed that his sword isn't one of the Crone swords because I remember that being one of the theories for a while.
I feel like it's too
Um,
big to be a Crone sword.
well, yeah, but also all 5 Crone swords are now accounted for.
Oh, gotcha.
Um, yeah, his whole thing, his sword kills people and lets them suck out their remaining lifespan, and that's why he's still alive because Tau normally only lived to 40 years. He's ultra militaristic and really, really hates the orcs. Um, he has a really cool model, and I really like his whole. He has the eight, which are his eight best fellow soldiers in the Far Side Enclave, and they're a legendary formation. It's like seven samurai. They actually suck on the tabletop, but that's neither here nor there.
I don't even think they're playable in match play, are they?
Probably not.
Because I think they were
now you
they
just
were introduced as like, this is for open play. You can have like a narrative game where you get to field the 8.
They were a formation in 7th edition.
So
Remember
yes,
those?
yeah, I like to forget. I like Farsight. As like for the longest time, I was just like, I hate the Tau, but Farsight's cool. Nowadays, I think the Tau are a lot better in the 41st millennium. So Farsight's not quite as necessary to be like, at least there's Farsight to justify the Tau.
Yeah, I guess I would say I appreciate Farsight, even if he doesn't particularly appeal to me, but the Tau also don't particularly appeal to me. Um, there is something to be said about, like, he's not actually that great of a melee character, but if you're the only melee guy in a non-melee race, I guess they just can't be choosers.
Yeah, I think he has like a ballistic or a weapon skill of like 3, which is garbage. But
And maybe like 5 attacks.
yeah, but at least he's there and he's trying.
Yeah.
So I like to.
And he looks cool.
Yeah, I think he's a comfortable B tier.
I'd B tier him as well.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on. Next up, we've got the leader of the Imperium Nihilus and Chapter Master Bloody Nose Commander. Wait a minute, who's that in front of him? Did somebody sneak in? Who? Why? It's
Creed!
All right, the meme's out of the way.
All right.
Yes, Creed, the leader of the Cadians, and we know that's technically not an overall faction leader, but the Cadians are the largest group of Imperial Guard, so he kind of counts.
He's kind of the face of the Imperial Guard.
And also, fantastic museum exhibit.
Yes, so Creed is no longer around in the 41st millennium. He's
not dead.
He got taken by Trazyn the Infinite at the fall of Cadia. So while he's technically not around anymore, it's his daughter leading as Lord Castellan of the Cadian forces. We know next to nothing about her thus far, and so I thought it would be best if we still talked about Creed.
I think it's well known is that she wants to like avenge her father or live up to his legacy.
Yeah,
but
so
I think there's room to grow there.
So let's talk about Creed and how he humiliated Abaddon for 300 years.
They're 800.
Maybe not 300, but like
I was say he was born in 959 M41.
Okay. Maybe not 300 years, but he was this human general was humiliating the Black Legion for the entire 13th Black Crusade until the fall of Cadia. Abaddon quite literally had his head in his in the claw of Horus and still failed to kill him because Abaddon is a bitch. Creed is an unsurpassed military genius. But I think that's kind of where his character pretty much ends.
Hey, he also talks and looks like Winston Churchill.
That's not a good thing.
Yeah, I like Creed for the memes.
Yeah.
But I also don't like the Imperial Guard, so
C tier?
C for Creed.
C for Creed.
Yeah. He tactically geniused his way there.
All right. Moving on. After the Eye of Terror ripped open, ripped in half, and the creating the Imperium Nihilus and the Imperium, Lord Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines and now Regent of the Imperium, needed someone he could trust to lead the Imperium on the other side. An Imperium beset by Xenos forces and horrible outbursts of chaos. And only reinforced by the brand new Primaris Space Marines, we've got Dante, one of the leaders and the closest embodiment to Sanguinius, other than the Sanguinor, of the Blood Angels. And I think he might be our first S tier, because Dante is such a cool character. He's got a really active presence. His aesthetic is cool. And
he just wants to die.
Yeah.
Someone let him die.
Dante's a really cool character. I really dig his just whole morbidity. I think he does a lot of the Blood Angels, like the tragedy of the Blood Angels, better than some of the more well-known characters like the Sanguinor and Mephiston.
Oh God, Mephiston.
Who got so angry he just kind of snapped out of being angry and just got over the Black Rage somehow.
He does desperately need a new model, though.
He does. But other than his model needing an update, Dante is such a great character. He's got a great presence in the lore. The stuff I've read of Dante is fantastic.
I would say he's probably the best first founding chapter master.
Yeah.
I like Calgar, but Calgar's also not to everyone's taste.
I don't give a crap.
And I think Dante is... Calgar got interesting after Gilliman came back. Kind of like how Gilliman got interesting after Gilliman came back. Yeah, I'm okay putting him in S. I don't feel super strongly about him, but I can't find anything really wrong with him that isn't out of fanboyism. But also, like, I'm a little okay with my particular grievance, which I'm sure we'll get to later.
All right. Moving on.
Next up, we have a guy who's technically part of the Emperor's Children, but no longer is, the mad scientist of the Chaos Space Marines, Fabius Bile, known to his friends as Fabulous Bill.
The single most hated character in the entire 41st Millennium.
You know, there was an author who wrote, like, an early 40k Black Library novel. I think it was about Blood Angels, and I forget who the author was. And he had Fabius Bill as the villain. And he got so angry at him and like was so hated as a character that he actually lobbied GW hard to let him kill him.
So, I think I have read the Fabulous Bile trilogy because the character, the concept of it, I thought was really interesting. But 3 books could not justify the stupidity of Fabius Bile for me. On the tabletop, he has a cool idea where he's constantly augmenting his forces around him. But the dude is an atheist augmenting forces, literally having demons shoved into them. He can and has talked to literal sentient demons and goes, "Oh, you're just a stupid manifestation of emotion. You're not conscious."
It's like people who want to play atheists in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, it's like how do you justify this when you are literally able to contact the gods?
Also, when you're supposed to be a pretty smart guy.
Yeah. So while I like Fabulous Bile as a concept and I like his model, I think he's another garbage character.
Really? All the way down to garbage?
Yeah.
He's a shrug for me, but you've got the stronger emotions here, so why don't you pitch him into garbage?
All right. Next, we've got the newest embodiment of the Beast, the avatar of Gork and Mork, the champion of the Goths, the greatest rival of Lord Commissar Sebastian Yarrick, and some other Space Wolf guy. A man who's had his head chopped off multiple times, but was too angry with his wah to die. Gazgul Mag Uk Thraka, who was not named after Margaret Thatcher.
So for all the reasons you just said, S tier.
Yes.
Gazgul's a classic. He's, if I recall correctly, him and Yarick are the first two 40k special characters, and it's easy to see why he is so loved. You know, he's just the biggest orc around. He is the orkiest orc, and everyone loves the orcs. It's hard to hate the orcs, so I feel like it's a little hard to hate Gazgul.
Yeah.
My only criticism with him is I'm a little mad that the plotline for the Third War for he tends to have plot lines that peter out. Like, he had the Third War for Armageddon, and it ends with he got bored and left, and Yarick chased him.
And he just
kind
of
showed up.
off.
Yeah, and he showed up in Octarius, helped clear the main planet of Octarius. I think it's called Octaria. Clear of Tyranids, took the best orcs and then left, and then, you know, Tyranids won Octarius afterwards.
And now he's on his way to Terra, but like that's probably going to be he's on his way for a while now.
Yeah, and he'll probably make a bunch of stops, erstwhile. But I'll tell you this, as somebody who's read the Beast Arises series, he's a lot more compelling of a leader of the orcs than the Beast was.
I mean, he's basically becoming the Beast at this point, isn't he?
Yeah, but the Beast didn't have a character.
Oh yeah, he was just the leader.
We had 6 or 7 beasts, Primorcs, whatever, and they don't show up in a lot of the books, and they're just kind of big and scary and say that they are slaughter a lot. Anyways, easy S tier for Gazgul.
Absolutely.
Very little room for improvement. Model great. On the flip side, however, we have the Grand Master of the Grey Knights, Caldor Drago. I want to tell you all a little story about Caldor Drago. Far away in the distant future, the Chaos Gods unleashed an unspeakable evil, but a foolish Grey Knight warrior wielding a force weapon stepped forth to oppose one of their mightiest champions. Ching, ching, ching. Before the final blow was struck, the demon tore open a portal in reality and flung the knight into the warp, where chaos's rules are law. Now the fool seeks to return to reality and undo the evil that is the immaterium. And with a story like that, how is he so goddamn boring?
Because he's a Grey Knight, and the Grey Knights fucking suck!
Yeah, Caldor Drago he's a Mary Sue.
Caldor Drago is the most special snowflake of the special snowflakes that is already the Grey Knights. And we talked about how much we hated the Grey Knights in the 40k tier list. Caldor Drago just embodies everything wrong with the Grey Knights.
I like how he gets to hold his position even though he can't reliably show up to actually lead and administer his chapter.
And the previous Grandmaster is back.
Yeah. Yeah, Shore is a special snowflake. Unreasonably badass for not quite a good reason. And I really feel like the Grey Knights lost their luster when the Custodes became more of a thing.
Yeah. Easy garbage tier for me. What about you?
Garbage.
Alright. Moving on, we have another one of the champions of one of the Chaos Gods. The closest thing to saying he represents Slaanesh. We have Lucius the Eternal, greatest duelist in the Materium. And holy shit, do I hate Lucius.
He's such a great duelist. His whole gimmick literally
revolves around dying, and even if he dies and nobody cares, Slaanesh is going to bring him back anyways, because Slaanesh doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting that all discussion about Lucius online by 40k fans tend to revolves around how he could actually be killed permanently, and not about Lucius as a character.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he sucks. He sucks hard. He's bad compared to the Age of Sigmar Immortal Champion of Slaanesh. He's
Both of
just
them.
noticeable for losing, but then haha, I actually didn't.
And
And
the
he was
ways
even a
they've
crappy
justified
duel.
the way they've justified the whole, aha, I actually didn't, is really dumb, to the point where he literally gets killed by, like, a Necron Lich Guard, and somehow the Lich Guard has a cold pride, and despite having no soul, Lucius is still able to burst out of his chest and become Lucius again.
He's just a character people hate or want to see dead finally.
Also, his model is butt ugly. Even when
By
there
the
was
way,
just resin models, his model was butt ugly.
one thing I want to bring up real quickly because people might be asking about this. Karn is not in this list because we didn't feel that Karn and Angron significantly diverged in their leadership of the World Eaters. I'm just bringing that up because you might see a Primarch and Immortal Champion of Chaos who are from the same group but are represented here separately. Needless to say, if Fulgrim was here, we probably wouldn't separate him out from Lucius. But Ahriman and our next pick do significantly diverge in leadership because next up we have Magnus the Red, who did everything wrong.
So, Thousand Sons were my second army. Because of if the Emperor had text to speech device, because of Magnus memes, and also because he, holy shit, has a gorgeous model. That said, Magnus' character is boring after the Horus Heresy.
He's well, he did become the Wizard King.
Yep. But his character basically shows up to fight the Space Wolves over and over, fuck up the Space Wolves, and then get banished again.
Hey, he also fought Gilliman.
Yeah, he fought Gilliman on the moon, surrounded by legions of Sisters of Silence, and then got banished. I think because of Cypher. Cypher showed up and helped Gilliman.
Maybe. I think he might have had Cypher at that point. But he also, did a whole big rift involving the Space Wolves and the Dark Angels where he manipulated two. No, wait. That was after that. That was after Magnus.
Yeah.
No. Magnus also did a whole big thing with the Dark Angels and the Grey Knights during Psychic Awakening, in which he pulled the Planet of the Sorcerers into real space. Or was that it already? Yeah,
No,
that was it.
I think he pulled the Planet of Sorcerers into real space during Wrath of Magnus, didn't he? He did it. He pulled it.
No,
right into the same.
Because there was I think that was Psychic Awakening where he did that.
Oh yeah, it was Prospero he brought back into real space, not Sortiarius.
Oh, it was Prospero, which I'm not sure why he did that still.
Oh well. I think
Anyways,
Magnus
has a great He's got a great Horus Heresy story.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. He's got a great Horus Heresy story.
And we're talking about 40k, where while he's got a great model, he's got some of the worst rules for a Primarch. And yeah, I think he's a B tier or C.
I'll B tier him.
All right.
I remember, speaking of him having worse rules, I remember telling Tomo how Nagash works on the tabletop and how much better of a wizard he is than Magnus. And you getting progressively angrier about it.
Yeah. Moving on, we have the other Demon Prime, the second Demon Primarch to get rules on the tabletop. And let's just set the stage for how trash of a character, how trash of a Demon Primarch, and how trash of just an introduction Mortarion got. The year is 2018, and GW announces an event called Fate of Connor. And this was like a big worldwide event where players would have to fight for the Imperium or fight for Chaos to save one of Ultramar's key planets a planet called Connor, or a sector called Connor. And all around the world, players fought and overwhelmingly supported the Imperium. This was supposed to be a big, big chaos event. And players were so overwhelmingly supporting Imperium that GW literally had to change the rules and take away wins from the Imperium to make it even fairer. This was supposed to be the event in which we got the third Primarch, the second Demon Primarch, in 40K. And because of how badly this event failed, they pushed his release back a couple months. Mortarion is such a mediocre, garbage character that he couldn't even have a good event to be introduced in.
His model also sucks.
Very over-designed, no focal point. At least he has better
Not
rules.
demonic enough.
At least he has better rules to support his faction than Magnus does. But yeah, like, the reason we have him separated is because most of his faction doesn't even like him. Sure, he is the emissary of Nurgle, but even Nurgle doesn't like him as much as somebody else.
Nurgle put him in the timeout box in recent books. Yeah, he in trouble.
So I think he's going to be another garbage character.
Yeah. Stick him on down there in the trash where he'll probably enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, next up, we go from the most vile and demonic to the most holiest of holies. We've got Morvenn Vahl, a High Lord of Terra and the highest abbess among the Sisters of Battle, the Adeptus Sororita. I looked at Morvenn Vahl's backstory in preparation for this video because I had never really looked into it before, and it's an interesting one. The Ecclesiarch at the time appointed her to her position, assuming that she would be easy to control. Instead of accepting her position immediately, she prayed to the Emperor for 3 days and then decided to take it up. She became, joined the High Lord's table, in which the Ecclesiarch found that she was not very easy to control as he thought, mainly because she doesn't play politics, and despite being a High Lord, still leads military campaigns and likes to go out and fight and lead from the front. And she was so cool and effective at this, Gilliman made her one of the High Lords of Terra on the table because she was a... There's High Lords of Terra who sit on the table, and then there's like the Lords of Terra. There's ones who have voting rights and one who just watch. She has voting rights. She's got a cool model. I don't know if she's been developed enough for me to formulate a huge opinion on her, but she's pretty neat.
Would you say it's neat enough to put her above Shrug?
I'd put her in C tier at least.
All right. I have zero opinions on her. All I know is she's in another one of the big war suits. She's actually a High Lord. She's the only playable High Lord in the game. And, well, unless you count Trajan Valoris. But,
and Gilliman.
Gilliman's not a High Lord, is he? He's higher than the High Lords.
Well, he's Regent of Terra. I think he gets to vote. He counts as one.
Anyway, I don't have any opinions on her whatsoever. I think her model's neat. But I mentioned in the 40k list, I don't care for the war suits, so... I guess she's a C tier. Moving on. I mentioned in 40k that Space Marines are boring. The Ultramarines embody why the Space Marines are boring. Jack of all trades, master of all trades, no personality of their own. Back in 30k, Rabute Gilliman kind of embodied that as well. He was the politician. He wrote the Codex Astartes after he tried to create a second Imperium during the Heresy. But then he got fucked up by a poisoned blade from, was it Lorgar or just a Slanesh demon?
It was Fulgrim.
Fulgrim, not Lorgar, yeah. And so he was in like a super coma for several thousand years until he got rescued by the Keebs. And now he's in a life support Terminator suit.
and Celestine. It was a
Wasn't
big
it
deal.
just Yvraine who was able to bring him back to life?
No, it was also Cawl and Celestine.
Oh, okay. Either way, Gilliman came back, and very similarly to the first episode of If the Emperor Had Text-to-Speech Device, he saw the Imperium as it was, said, "Oh my god, what the fuck did you guys do?" and immediately set to work to try and fuck the galaxy.
Man returns from vacation with fresh new hatred for Job.
Yeah. And seeing him struggle to try to unfuck the grim darkness and the decline of the Imperium, Gilliman somehow went from my least favorite Primarch to my favorite Loyalist Primarch.
And you know what's a cool thing you'd appreciate? Is he has a similar plot to Fabius Bile, but it kind of ends in the reverse. If you read the Dark Imperium books, Gilliman at first refuses to say that the Emperor is a god. He doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe in his own divinity, and he refuses it. But you get these scenes where it's inside his own head, and he has this niggling self-doubt. And by the end of it, he is he has started to believe the Emperor may be a god. There's a great moment in the first book. Gilman has this thing where he has theoretical, practical, where it's like it's how he processes information, and he goes, and he's thinking about the Emperor being God, and he goes, theoretical. The Emperor was never intended to be a god, was not a god, but is now worshipped by one, and his powers affect the universe as a result. Practical. He is a god. Theoretical. The Emperor was originally a man, but through the power of belief has become a god. Practical. He is a god. And the whole thing is he just keeps coming to this
The end goal of he is a god.
That the Emperor is a god. And he's like, by all logic, that's what it says, but I can't accept it. And
Morgar was right.
Down. Unfortunately. So yeah, Gilliman, very cool character once he came back.
Yeah.
And I think it's very notable that he's probably the most well-developed Primarch, and the only one that I know of who had a good relationship with his adopted mom.
So I'd be willing to put him in S because I really like Gilliman. If not,
S-tier.
I think a confident A. S tier?
S tier.
Yeah.
S tier. Gilliman's great.
Moving on is another S tier character. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I get this introduction.
Oh, someone in the Discord or the Twitch is just like, Lorgar, I'm not wrong, only early.
So, this picture is of the Swarmlord, but the thing is, the Swarmlord's not really the leader of the Tyranids. The leader of the Tyranids is the Hive Mind. Even though the Hive Tyrants and the Swarmlord have a bit of their own personality, they're intrinsically tied to the Hive Mind. There is no escaping. Matter of fact, every Tyranid is in some part the Hive Mind, because the Hive Mind is not Kerrigan from the Zerg. It's not like one thing that's controlling everything else. It is literally the collective minds and souls and thoughts of all of the Tyranids everywhere. But we're using the Stormlord to represent it. How about you share your thoughts first, and then I'm going to get into mine.
So, Shade's not going to like this, but I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the hive mind as a concept, mostly because I prefer knowable enemies, whereas Shade likes, a lot of the eldritch, unknowable, Lovecraftian type of monster. I prefer the devil you know. That said, the concept that you can't really reason with the Tyranids, you can't argue with them, they have a consciousness beyond anything we can possibly fathom, is really cool. The whole concept of the shadow in the warp is not that the Tyranids are cutting off warp space by their presence, it's their screaming souls are so loud and so overpowering that they are overpowering the warp. Which is also pretty cool. But now we're going to listen to Shay talk about why they are so cool and deserve to be an S tier, which I'm not going to argue with.
Well, see, here's my issue. I would almost have to separate the Hive Mind into two entries to really properly rate them. Because the Hive Mind and the Tyranids get two different portrayals in 40k. There would be the hive mind as it's presented in the Tyranids Codex. And then there's the hive mind when it gets presented outside of that context. Other writers like to screw up the hive mind. Oh, the hive mind hates the blood angels.
The hive mind died.
No! The hive mind died when the Great Rift opened. The hive mind gets pushed around by the Chaos God.
The hive mind might be fleeing.
No, shut up. Whereas the hive mind in the Tyranids Codex is this vast, unknowable, truly alien creature. Its only thought is how to consume you best, and it's just running through. It evolves, it adapts, it has no true emotion, not in that sense. It only hungers. Looking at it devours your soul. And that is an S tier hive mind. Hive mind, when it gets portrayed elsewhere, boy does it hurt. Boy do I hate it. I hate it a lot.
Or how about we talk about 40k Gladius, where there's multiple hive minds.
Shut up. So yeah, I'm gonna put an S tier just because I love them so much. But fucking GW, please portray the hive mind better. There's been only one instance where the hive mind was given emotion, any degree of emotion that I liked, and that's because it tied into their wider cosmic horror aspect. It was in an Eldar versus Tyranids book. The Eldar managed to wound a piece of the hive mind, their soul, a micro fraction of it. And during that instance, an Eldar psyker looked into the hive mind to I'll try to spy on it. And when she intruded on its space, the entirety of the hive mind looked at her and just had this. She got this overwhelming feeling of angry disgust of how dare you?
Sounds very much like Sauron in Lord of the Rings. The first time Frodo puts the ring on,
yeah,
and just Sauron's eye, just he feels Sauron's gaze on him immediately.
Yeah, it's hatred, but it's hatred of an unfathomable degree.
Yeah,
it's beyond human. I'm just gonna say one last thing, by the way. People misunderstand the Swarmlord a lot. I know people are all oh, the Swarmlord gets killed all the time. It's a jobber. People need to read the Tyranids Codex, okay? The Swarmlord, his job is not to go out there and fight people. The Swarmlord is a strategic genius, which is able to better coordinate the Tyranids locally than the hive mind can. Then, once it has secured victory via strategy, then and only then does the Swarmlord go out and try to 1v1 the enemy commander to make the enemy lose harder. In other words, if you are fighting the Swarm that has come to you, you have already lost, and it's just trying to make you lose harder.
And that's
and
why.
I will say that.
And that's why when you try to when big characters try to challenge the Swarmlord to 1v1 before he takes to the field, they get 9 Carnifexed.
Yeah, the thing note is the Swarmlord has never been strategically defeated. It's always he had to get killed before he has worked things out, or he has already won by strategy and he goes out to fight and dies. But people need to understand that Swarmlord is not a duelist. The Swarmlord is more Creed than he is Lucius.
Yeah. Moving on, because I can feel through the screen Shade getting angry. We're talking about the War in Heaven. When the Necron tier were trying to stop themselves from getting super cancer because their sun was super radioactive, they went to the Immortal Old Ones for help. And the Immortal Old Ones said, get off my lawn, and fucked off. So they said, no, come back here, and decided to fight. And then the Catan showed up, and we're just like, hey, we can help you fight. And the leader of the Necron tier was just like, oh? And they're like, yeah, get into these machines. We're going to turn you into immortal metal men, and you can fight the old ones. And they're like, okay. And so Zarek, the leader of the Necron tier, led his people some in chains, into the process of biotransference. And only once they came out on the other side did Zarek realize, oh hell, I fucked up. Because the Catan proceeded to start eating them, eating their souls. Because biotransference stripped away their mortality, but also their, for lack of a better word, humanity.
The Necron tyrannity.
Yes. So Zarek is the living representation of why the Necrons fucked up. He was able to fight, he won the battle against the Old Ones. Or not really. They killed the Old Ones, but then the Old Ones' creators, or creations, came back and won the war in heaven.
Also, there were enslavers everywhere.
Yes, also enslavers, and also they had to fight off their Catan creators. And they won. They fucked up the Catan, they fucked up the enslavers, but, they're now Necrons forevermore. And so Zarek, realizing he's super fucked up, took a lot of the protocol codes for a lot of the Necron weapons and fucked off forever. And then came back millions of years later.
Yeah. Because he ran into... originally it was because he ran into the Nids in the void of space, but GW's been a little deflective, evasive on whether that's still the explanation.
So, I think Zarek, representing the horrible nature of what the Necrons are and what they used to be, is a confident A tier. His model is kind of meh, so I don't want to stick him in S personally.
I really wish he looked less like an average Necron Overlord, or like had a body like Catacross. I think he should look different than the other Necron, because, he is the ultimate Necron. Yeah. One thing I will say that I love about Zarek is there's a bit of horror to him to the Necron. Because any dynasty that Zarek encounters, like physically, that he runs into, immediately bends the knee to him. And it's pretty well believed that he still has the command codes and can force their compliance. And that makes a lot of the Necron overlords very scared. And I really like, he's not just, great leader, whatever. He also has a bit of a threat to him of undoing the Necrons.
Because they're all robots, and he has the robot activation codes.
Yeah.
So I think he's a confident A.
I am fine with this ranking.
Yeah. I don't feel like he's present enough to be an S tier. A certain other character I think might belong there better.
Well then, moving on. Next up, we have Trajan Valoris, the Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes.
Have they brought us more new Ancient Tech 2 display?
Shrug.
Yeah. Trajan Valoris, like, you talked about the Custodes in our 40k video about how cool they are. Trajan Valoris is just another Custodes.
Yeah, the only notable thing about him in the Watchers of the Throne book, he kind of plays mind games with fellow Custodes, where like he gets them to do what he wants, but not by directly telling them what how things should go down or revealing his plans. He's a bit of a schemer, but I don't know, man. He not enough of him like rubs off on me.
Yeah.
He's there. He's cool. He's not quite Constantine Valdor.
No. Moving on. Whereas Mortarion is a little bitch, and he sucks, and nobody likes him, and even Nurgle doesn't even like him, we have another champion of chaos. One who has been present for just about as long as the other named champions of chaos in real space, has been leading the Death Guard in real space, leading raids, being Daddy Nurgle's chosen champion. The guy who was able to lead zombies before poxwalkers became a thing. We got Typhus. And I think Typhus is actually an A tier, where Mortarion was garbage.
Yeah, he's a jolly fellow, and I also like Typhus accepts the reality of chaos's strategic actualities. Notably, in the Dark Imperium books, when Mortarion's going on his whole plan, it's like, I'm gonna attack McCrag and draw Gilliman back here, and I'm gonna fight him and kill him. Typhus is like, this is a stupid idea. He's gonna kick your ass. Why don't you just destroy McCrag to weaken, destroy the Ultramar to, permanently weaken the Imperium and move on to do something else. You are letting your own petty goals get in the way of what Papa Nurgle really wants. You are a fool and an idiot, and I'll say so to your face.
Yeah, and there's that fact. He literally tells Mortarion he sucks to his face. Mortarion, the guy who Caldor Drago ripped open the chest of and carved his name into his heart.
Not his name, the name of the previous Grandmaster. Also, Typhus, 2 cool models in a row. I know people prefer his previous one. I still think his new one looks cool. And he's got zombies. And he's the one responsible for turning the Death Guard to Nurgle, really.
Yep. So I think a very confident A tier. He is everything Mortarion wishes he could be.
And more.
Moving on, we've got Shade.
Yes. Next up, we have Uthar the Destined. A great call of the Greater Thurian League, one of the leagues of Votann. Uthar, when he was cloned, prophecy had foretold that the cloned kin of that day were meant for something great. And the Votann machine of the Greater Thurian League, passed down that he was destined to one day do something, amazing. And, he was able to wield the Blade of the Ancestors, a legendary sword of the kin. And the whole thing with Uthar is he's still not quite sure what his great destiny, what the great thing he's supposed to do is. And he's known for being rather ruthless to the point of sacrificing others. But he also has a bit of a mirth and a gallous humor that hides his own self-doubt, that perhaps the prophecy of him being so great is wrong, and he's not really the great hero he's supposed to be. Shrug.
Yeah. I was like, do you want to stick him above Shrug? I don't.
No, I mean, we'll see how he develops.
Yeah,
he's too new right now. I think his plot has potential. I could see him going a higher tier eventually.
At this point, though, what is he fighting for? He doesn't even know.
Yeah. What am I even fighting for?
All right. Moving on. We're talking about another character who had a garbage introduction, but for a different reason. So, for several editions, the Eldar had been trying to reawaken their death god, Yniad, whatever. And they kept failing, mostly because Eldar are dicks and put themselves in a situation where the Death Watch fucked them over out of spite. Then
it partially worked.
Then we had this random ass Eldar witch walking the dark path, training in the arenas of Kamara. She got her shit slapped, and then all of a sudden there was a crack of lightning, and somehow she was brought back to life along with a baby Yniad.
It should be noted that before she was Gladiatrix in Kamara, she was previously a craft rolled out psychic potential.
Yes.
And then became a pirate queen for a while. And then, and only then, did she go to Kamara.
And so when she was resurrected, she gained the allegiance of an old Eldar named the Vizark, who swore...
Vizark, an aspect warrior who has been simping for
yeah.
time.
uh, alongside one of the legendary Crone swords of the Eldar. Then she went off to Bealtan, fucked up Bealtan, and crafted the Bealtan Infinity Engine into the Yinkarn, the avatar
It,
of Yiniad.
and broke Beltan.
Yes, also, yeah, Beltan's fucked. Then she went off, decided we need to ally with somebody to fight off chaos. Orcs can't be done. Fuck the Necrons. The Tower too stupid and young. So the humanity was their last option. So she went off, helped save Gilliman, and God, her whole introductory arc was just, we are replacing all of the Eldar. And I really hated her for the longest time.
But then,
Ninth Edition happened, and Drazar decided he's going to go fight Jane Czar. And they fought to the death. Drazar won, and then Jane Czar came back, and Jane Czar used the Ynnari bodies, and she won, and revealing Drazar to be the lost Phoenix Lord, Ara. While this is all happening, or a little bit after this all happened, Slaanesh finally took notice of the Ynnari, sent her greatest demon, Shalaxi Haldane, to fuck up a conclave of the Ynnari, including all of their major leaders, all of their Phoenix Lords, what's his name? The leader, Eldrad, a Solitaire, and like the Shalaxi Halbane humiliated them, killed the Yinkarn, killed the Solitaire, and after a giant battle in which the Ynnari forces got decimated, they finally managed to repel her and banish her, only for Shalaxi to reveal they've been fighting a mere hologram that was a fraction of her true power. And it was just like, oh, okay, yeah, the Ynnari actually still kind of fucking suck. They're not there yet. Okay. And that humiliation, I think, let me not hate Yvraine anymore, because Yvraine is still not where she needs to be to take over the all of the Eldar. But I still don't think she's that great a character.
I have a significant problem with Yvraine. She is the high priestess and essentially the messiah for a death cult religion, and the high priestess of a death god, right? Where are all her skulls?
Yeah, she doesn't have enough skulls. Instead, she has a cat.
Yeah. Like, she should look like a Mortark. She doesn't. She needs to goth it up. God damn it.
Hell, even just covering her with, like, soul stones would be better.
Yeah. C tier.
Yeah, I agree. And
her
finally...
model's kind of neat.
What's that?
I like the fact that her model's kind of neat, and I like the fact that in the lore, her dress could fall away at the button because it's not supposed to be something she fights in. It's supposed to be her, WWE walkout outfit when she enters the arena. Anyways, finally, we have the other grand leader of the Necrons, controller of the largest dynasty empire in the modern galaxy, Imatek, the Stormlord. For people who don't know his origin story, Imatek was not originally the pharaoh of his dynasty, the Satek dynasty. He was merely an overlord, a great general. I believe he actually had the nemesis or something equivalent. And what happened was, when the Satek dynasty woke up, I believe the original pharaoh died or something went wrong with him awakening. And so all of the lords that overlord, who woke up, tried to claim power for themselves. And the Satek dynasty engaged in this colossal civil war with each other, where they were just fighting, trying to put one of them on top. And one of the overlords, in a bid for power, woke up Imatek, the Satek dynasty's greatest general, to say, hey, I have woken you up. You will lead my army and make Tharod. And Emotek looked at the situation and said, screw that, none of you deserve it. He killed all the other competing overlords and made himself the Tharod and took over. And since then, he's been leading on a grand conquest and expanding his borders. And if that origin story sounds similar to you, yes, it is basically Cetra in space.
So Imhotep, I think, is fantastic. He represents the threat of the Necrons. Not so much the Necron tier. Zarek's story finishes, basically, with the fall of the Necron tier and the end of the War in Heaven. Imhotep's starts there. And as a result, he became a far more present threat. Other Necron lords whisper his name in fear, whereas, Zarek is a fallen god. Imhotep is the one you don't want to cross. He is the one traveling the galaxy, finding all the Necrons to awaken them from their great sleep. He is the threat of the Necrons.
Imhotep to me embodies something I think that needs to happen in DK, and that is having less of the greatness tied to stuff in the past and more of the greatness tied into what is currently happening.
Yeah, it's why Gilliman works as a character now more than he did in 30K.
Yeah, too much of the plot revolves around the Primarchs and what the Primarchs are doing and who the Primarchs are coming back and what the new Primarchs doing back. And it's like, why can't you be happy with the characters you have now? Why can't the people in the 41st millennium be able to tell their story and be cool and whatnot instead of having it all tied to stuff that passed? And I think that's neat about Imhotep. I also like the fact that he's a strategic genius, but he can't.
Sorry?
He can't figure out orcs.
Well, you can't figure out orcs.
Yeah, but they frustrate him to a great degree. Yeah. Imhotep used to have a role where he could seize the initiative on a 4+ rather than a 6+ back when that was a thing, except if he was fighting orcs. In which case, I believe he couldn't roll to seize the initiative because they confound him so.
That's hilarious. So I think Imhotep more than Zarek deserves to be an S tier.
He's above Zarek for me. It's hard for me to put him in S tier just because I think other Necron characters are cooler than him. But if we're talking on the scale of just purely faction leaders, yeah, he can go up there.
All right.
I just wish GW didn't have his plot taking a back seat now that Zarek is back.
All right. Now, how do I? I can't remove Be'lakor.
All right, just leave him in shrug tier, I guess.
All right. Well, that was my screw up. And with that, that's our list. So in S tier, we've got Dante of the Blood Angels, Gazgul Mag Urk Thraka, Lord Gilliman, Regent of Terra, the Hive Mind, represented by the Stormlord, Imhotep the Stormlord.
In A tier, we have Armand the Exile. I believe it might have Armand the Exile, Zarek the Silent King, and Typhus the Traveler.
In B tier, we've got Angron, the Angel of Death, I think his title is? No,
the Red Angel.
The Red Angel. We've got the Phoenix Lords, represented by Asurmen, Commander Farsight of the Farsight Enclaves, and Magnus the Red, Primarch of the Thousand Suns.
In C tier, we have Vect, we have Anva, we have Creed, we have Morven Val, and we have Yvrain.
The characters we don't really care about are Be'lakor, the first demon Primarch, or the first demon, Trajan Valoris, Captain General.
Demon Prince.
First Demon Prince, yes, sorry. Trajan Valoris, Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes, and Uthar,
the Destined.
The Destined, Grand Val of
Cawl.
Grand Cawl. I don't know or really care about the squats.
And in garbage tier, we have Thalbadon the Heart, uh, Fabulous Bill, a whole lot of warp dust walking as a man, a guy whose gimmick is always losing, and a Primarch who is less cool than his first captain.
So, what do you think of this list, Shade?
This list has been our most balanced thus far.
No, it hasn't.
We haven't really skewed towards one tier as much,
Our fifth list was almost entirely perfectly balanced.
as all things should be.
Yes. I think this list we had a lot less debate on where the characters should belong.
Yes, and I find it interesting how evenly spread stuff is.
Yeah, this time we don't have one faction dominated by Xenos. We don't have the S tier dominated by Xenos.
Yes.
Although the garbage tier is entirely Marines.
Well, they could suck it.
Yeah. I think adding a we don't care enough tier is was a good choice for us,
Indeed.
because like I don't care about those characters. And with that, Shade, do you have something witty or clever to leave us off with?
Yes. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, guys who are really good at strategy tend to be the best leaders.